With all of that in mind, we'll have lots of pause points, probably after most of those individual sections, where you can ask questions, and we'll explore how you can personalize or individualize the learning and improve the access of a resource that you've prepared once, but how it can be adapted depending on the learning needs of pupils that you have working with you. So the idea of the accessibility tools from Microsoft is to have a completely inclusive classroom, whether that's around more formal context for education, such as reading, writing, and maths. Maybe it's around the communication. It could be around that they've got a hearing or a vision learning support need. It might be that there's a mental health element to consider there. And the idea of the philosophy from Microsoft is that the accessibility tools just mean that there isn't a barrier to being successful in celebrating their learning and what they're achieving, and that accessing the resource and being able to tweak it and amend it and suit your needs is something you can do more easily with the accessibility tools. This grid or periodic table here, as I like to refer to it, is something that's updated regularly from Microsoft. There is a specialist in Microsoft called Mike Tholson, and he's an amazing guy, and what he's dedicated is a lot of his work to accessibility tools. And he's one of the people that drives the developments of accessibility tools and where you can find them in Office 365. So down the left hand side you'll be able to see different tools that may enable you to access a resource or enable your pupils to access a resource, and then going across it tells you which platforms they're in, such as OneNote or Word or Outlook and Flipgrid, the whiteboard tool in Teams meetings, Microsoft Forms, Minecraft for Education, Office Lens, and the Edge web browser as well. And Microsoft aren't too precious about this. They've developed the learning tools to work with other third-party products from companies that are not Microsoft themselves, but they want the accessibility to learning mission to be as successful as possible regardless of what you're using. And all the time Microsoft are considering other third parties they may work with and also how they can roll it out to the products they've got themselves. What we want to do is promote that independence of learning, whether it's dyslexia, whether they've got whether people have some sort of blindness or they've got a visual impairment or a hearing impairment, whatever the learning need is, that let's try and produce something to make that resource more accessible. And the idea is that from a cost point of view in school, that you aren't having to buy in lots of extra resources unless you really need a specialist piece of software, that you can try and have as much as possible catered through the tools that are here and built into Windows 10 and Office 365. Some of the learning tools that are used commonly certainly is Immersive Reader, and that'll be one of the first ones we look at. PowerPoint Live is becoming really popular and narrator, and I'll show you how to do that. And PowerPoint Live is where you're talking and on screen you will see various subtitles come up, but also the auto captioning, which is built into things like Stream, and PowerPoint in Teams is really powerful because you could be talking in one language and, for instance, it could be translating to another language. So we're going to focus on the main core areas here of reading, writing, maths and communication, and we'll work our way through, and during the presentation we'll break out to look at the relevant apps and just then dip into how they could be used in the real life context. There's a lot of people that have worked with Microsoft to back up their products through research and using them across all educational phases, from early years right the way through to further education and higher education. And as I said earlier, the mission of Microsoft is about improving access to learning. We'll look at Immersive Reader first. It's got various features that are quite useful. The first one usually it strikes you is the fact it can read the text on screen out loud. So if you've got a lower literacy level, it doesn't have to be a barrier to learning that if you're doing maths, you can't read the text on screen to answer the question. All of those things can be overcome. There's lots of other tools built in there, and we'll have a quick look at how they work in a real life example in a moment. I think it's probably a good point to jump over. So if I swap the screen I'm sharing and I move over to the other version, which is going to be a Microsoft Teams version for today. So you should see a screen that says good afternoon, and it's the Office 365 landing page. I'm going to jump over into Teams. I've got quite a few tabs open here. After ask the question, well, where can I find Immersive Reader? And actually, Immersive Reader is throughout Office 365. It's also available in Windows 10 too. But if I went, for instance, into a primary class team, and it's got a few examples of demo teams set up here, it may be that I've had something posted here in the posts that as a pupil I'm struggling to read. What I can do is I can use Immersive Reader to get accessibility to that, and this could be in OneNote class notebook, it could be in assignments. There's lots of places that you can find it. But if you scroll down the list, you'll see from right clicking and clicking the ellipses there that you can enable Immersive Reader. And what it does is it transfers from that very busy post screen to what the individual different post is, but here in a more minimalized, restricted version, which gets rid of all that clutter and busyness around it and pairs it back to what I might need to read it. So there's various tools that I can use to adjust the text on screen, the colors, the size, and the font. But the first thing you may want to do as a pupil is just have it read to you. So if I press play, and you would show pupils where the accessibility tools are, particularly Immersive Reader, and quite quickly you'll be surprised how independent they become at using those. If you know you need to reach parents at home, there are various guides online. Microsoft's got a really good accessibility website where you can link parents to it, and it will then show them how to use Immersive Reader and where to find it in different products. If you wanted to change text formatting, you can change the size of it. So if that's too big and you need it to be smaller, you can drag it down. If you actually need it to be larger, you can drag it up. You can have increased spacing between words so the text isn't quite so dense and you haven't got so much on the screen in one go, so I'm going to put that on. If you want to have it displayed in other fonts, you can swap across and you can enable those different fonts. If you maybe had a visual impairment and you needed a different color background and green didn't work for you, you can switch on the yellow, and then that will enable you to get in there and make sure that they are able to adjust that resource so that it suits their needs, and you've not just got a situation where they physically can't get in and they can't see something because the color in the background doesn't suit them. You could also have something formatted in the original way, or you can turn off the formatting and then it will just become non-formatted standard text. There are grammar options in here too, so you can adjust things by syllables. You can also turn on so it highlights things like nouns and verbs. I might want adjectives off and I want adverbs on. I could have those labeled up in text, so now you can see that I've got nouns and I've got adjectives and I've got things split up by symbols. The other thing that you can do is you can hover over a word and you can get the pictorial version. So if I click on there and there's a pictorial version available, it's there built right into Immersive Reader. I don't need an additional piece of software to see that. And if I'd like to have the individual word read, it's there right for me, and I don't have to worry about trying to install an additional piece of software and is it going to link in with Windows and is it going to link into the piece of software. It's there in Office 365 straight away. All of those things can be switched off. If you find they're cluttering your view, you can disable all of those. They don't have to remain on. So there we go. That's a version where it's all switched off. And then finally on the end, you've got reading preferences. The picture dictionary I switched on is there. You can also introduce a line focus. If you have dyslexia or a different learning need, you may find that there's too much text on the screen. It's moving around for you. It's just too much there. So you can have the line focus to bring in a single line, and then as it reads, the line focus will shift with what's being read. And that allows you to just focus on the important text that's being read and not worry about the other text that's there. You've also got the ability to translate. If you've written and created this resource as a teacher into other languages, so there's lots of languages in there and they are being included all the time. So if you find at the moment you haven't got a particular language, you can request that they're included from Microsoft in a features request, or they are constantly listening to feedback from around the world and trying to understand just how that they can be included and which ones are popular ones to include, and then they can make sure that they are there and they're available for you. So I'm going to just pause at that point after talking to you about Immersive Reader and say, okay, because I see someone says we couldn't hear the spoken text. I'm not quite sure why that's not coming through for you today. I will check that I'm using my audio device. Yeah, I've got audio device, system audio included. You should hear it read out loud. It usually comes through, but apologies, it hasn't come through today. You press play. Let me jump back across for you. I can see people. You press the play button down the bottom. So if let's get rid of that and scroll up. And I've pressed play down here. Instead of brought. So there it will read the text to you. Did that come through, or could you see that moving? Still no sound. Okay, I can't fathom at this second in time why that's not come through you. I've done 2 more training sessions today, and it has pulled through both times. Typically this afternoon it's not. I can see that everything is selected that it should come through, but literally when you play it, it just reads out aloud to you, and in there it will go for you. The Immersive Reader tool is there in most applications, and you'll see as we go through some of these other accessibility tools where it links in and where you can then use it in other areas. And it doesn't have to be just limited to the single area. It can be brought in many different ways. Any other questions on accessibility tools? Either unmute or let's talk out loud, whichever one you want. Okay, all right, well, we'll move on. Just going to pop back over to the presentation a moment and swap screens. Okay, so where to find Immersive Reader in Office 365 and Microsoft? It is in a lot of the core software that you will use, whether it's over here Microsoft Whiteboard that you use during meetings, or you might use Whiteboard on its own. It's an app in Office 365. You can also have Immersive Reader switched on in the Edge browser. So if you're looking at a website, you can, from the address bar at the top, you will see the Immersive Reader icon towards the right hand corner of the address bar. You can click it and then it will transfer the text in the website to Immersive Reader, and it's in a lot of the other core apps. It's also inside of Minecraft Education Edition, so if you're using that to teach various elements of the curriculum, it's something you can switch on and then it will flick to Immersive Reader mode. So if you're capturing something as an evidence in your logbook, for instance, that will read it in Immersive Reader there, and it's then in there. Microsoft are considering all the time about various other ways that it can be included. Immersive Reader is also in a lot of partner products, so all of the people that you can see on screen there currently have Immersive Reader available in their platforms too. It works in exactly the same way because it's based on the version I've just shown you inside of Office 365. But what it does is it helps to get access to those resources too, so that you've definitely got the ability just to jump in and use it in exactly the same way. Another thing that's quite useful, and I did this by demo on screen, is Office Lens. So Office Lens can be downloaded as an app on Android or iOS. It can also be installed on your Windows computer as an app from the Microsoft Store. And as you can probably see there, you've got Immersive Reader built right into Office Lens. So Office Lens is an app in its own right, but it's also built into the new bundle version of Office. You hold it over the top of the text that you'd like to read in the book. And once you've got that text scanned into Immersive Reader, you can then use into Office Lens. You can then use Immersive Reader to change that text and get it to suit different needs. And you can see that it's converted into a different language, and it works exactly the same way as the full-blown version you've got online, except it's in your hand. I use this quite a lot when I'm walking around the classroom. I might want to capture an example of pupil work, and then that pupil work appears on my phone, but I could also then export that and I could send it into Teams, so I could post it in class Teams, and it would work absolutely fine. So there's a lot of scope there about using Office Lens to grab work from the classroom, but then you can use the power of Office Lens and the accessibility tool in the Immersive Reader built into it to convert it into the various different formats that you'd like. PowerPoint Live is another really good development that's come about recently. So PowerPoint Live can be switched on in Office 365 web apps. They're the versions of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint you use as tabs in your web browser that you launch from Office 365. Or it can be used in the desktop version of Office 365. In other words, the installed versions of Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. Or if you've got Office 2019, but anything lower than that, I'm afraid PowerPoint Live is not available as a feature. So if you've got Office 2016 or lower, you'll need to speak to your IT company and ask for a support ticket to have a higher spec version of Office 365 or Office 2019 installed. But you can still, in the short term, use it in the online version. And I'm going to try using it today in the online version of PowerPoint a little bit later. So you'll see just exactly what it looks like. What it does is it converts the slides. So at the top of the screen here, you can see a small version of the slide that I would be presenting. And I may be talking in English in my classroom, but down here it's coming up in different languages. And each pupil, it's French in this instance, each pupil could select their own preferred language. So I'm speaking in English, but it's converting to them in their language. You obviously need to consider lots of pupils in your classroom having different devices with audio all chirping out. So you may want to get them to use headphones, but it does allow them to be able to tap into the presentation that they need to see and they need to understand, but they get to hear it in their primary language, and then they can get to pick up the English and get used to that in the classroom if that's something that you need them to adjust to. You can have reactions back to the teacher using emojis and text. So it's quite a good tool to, again, produce the resource once, but then allow the pupil or the student to customize it to suit their learning needs so that they can dip into the content that's on screen. Auto captions mean that in Microsoft Live that you aren't just limited to PowerPoint Live, you can enable them in Teams. You can also have them as subtitles in a video in Stream, which can be there. And it uses what's called machine learning. So as you say things or words are heard on screen, if they're pronounced with an accent or they aren't pronounced clearly, what the computer does in the background in Office 365 does is it learns those mispronounced words or those different pronunciations of words, and it will then add them into the repertoire so they come up more accurately in the captions that you get underneath. The next area we're going to look at is writing in the inclusive classroom. And one of the things that you may want to do, again, in Word Online or either in Word Desktop Office 365 or in Word 2019, you've got ways that you can highlight different aspects of text. So in this video here on the right hand side, you can see that you click ideas, and in a text you can highlight the text, and it helps particularly I would say upper key stage 2 into secondary pupils rebuild the document they may have written naturally and make natural suggestions about how to improve the flow of the text or the way a paragraph's written. Now, obviously, if you're doing some work in key stage 2, maybe it's spag in English, you're not going to want them to use that tool to effectively cheat and improve their own work. But if it's something where that the English isn't necessarily the focus and that could become a barrier to learning, maybe you were doing some topic work in primary and you just want to get the text down in a good way where it flows, it's understandable, you can use those tools in Word to help you achieve that. You've also got in here the ability to dictate. So on the toolbars that you've got in Word, you can be on the home toolbar, and towards the end of the home toolbar, you'll have a little microphone option, and then the microphone option can drop down again if you're using the online version of Office 2019. And what it can do is allow you to dictate into other languages straight into Word, so that instead of having to have separate dictation pieces of software, they're in there inside of Office 365 and Office itself. With Windows 10, you can go into the settings, which you can get to by pressing the start button in the bottom left-hand corner. And in settings, there's various accessibility options built into Windows 10. So you can have text suggestions on screen. As you can see from the screenshot on the right, when you misspell a word, you can have a pop-up box that appears, and that pop-up box will suggest the most likely autocorrect option. So instead of underlining with a red wavy line, you can actually see the words. And that probably mimics more closely how you might get it on a mobile device or a tablet device, and it suggests corrections for spellings. You could also have multi-language text detection on there as well, so it will pick up in other languages, and you can set your preferred languages that you wish to work in. And it currently supports 75 languages. And again, Microsoft are looking to increase that in Windows 10, so just keep an eye on it, it will develop. As far as including pupils in the classroom with maths is concerned, there is a maths tool that's available. So the maths tool is built into products like OneNote. It's also available separately on the internet as a maths tool individually. You can install it on your phone, so it's available for Android and iOS. And what the maths tool does is it helps you look at calculations, and it works best for number to highlight that text and help you get to an answer. There's also a graphing calculator if you're joining us from secondary schools, where if you are going to use that, you need to install it from the Windows Store. I haven't got it installed on my computer today. I installed it for a rebuild recently. But what it does is it allows you to move around graphs, particularly when you're looking at algebraic graphs in Key Stage 4, and change the values in there, and it automatically then regraphs based on the values you've entered in the section on the right-hand side. So if I just jump out of there, I think the easiest thing to do to show you now is to go across and look at a real life example of that. So I'm just going to swap screen shares for you a moment. Jump back over to Teams. And we'll come out of Immersive Reader. And we're going to go across. So I'm still in my class team here. And I'm going to go across to OneNote Class Notebook. OneNote Class Notebook is only in class teams, otherwise you just have OneNote, but accessibility tools are there too. So you have Immersive Reader built into your OneNote book. So you can use it to convert a page of text, but we're going to focus here on the maths tool. So if I went in, and I think I've got a resource already produced. If I went to maths, for instance, maybe it's not that one. It might be in my teachers only area, something I was preparing. In here, I've got my addition and subtraction, so I want a bit more screen space. So collapse that out to the side and expand that there. Here you can see that I have been busy on the board just typing in the calculation we're doing today. And up here at the top in the ribbon, you've got all the different tools for OneNote Class Notebook here right inside of Teams. But what we're going to use is the Immersive Reader tab if we wanted to turn that into an accessible version. So if I clicked Immersive Reader, it would get rid of that page that I've got in there, and it would then turn it into the readable version with the same options I had before. So that's where it is in there just for reference. But what we're going to look at is we're going to go to the Draw tab, and in here there's something called the Maths tool. So what we could do is highlight what we've written on screen. We've literally scribed this in by inking on the board. It's got my text there. If I hit the Maths tool, this can be used by staff and also by pupils. So as a member of staff, you might want to use it to check if a pupil's answer is correct, and you want them to see how you get to an answer, but also they could use this themselves to see how you get to an answer. So the first thing you want to check is has it picked up everything you've written on the board correctly. If it hasn't, you can go to fix it, and then you can choose the correct operation or the correct number if you wish. You can ink to maths, which means it then puts a printed version on the screen, but you probably want to use one of the actions down here. One of the favorites is that you can evaluate what the answer is. So it's 8, but when you evaluate what the answer is, you can see the steps in getting to that answer, so that the journey is the thing that's more important. There's the Immersive Reader icon again, so if I need that read to me, Immersive Reader can jump in and it can read out the text that's on screen here. So if it's too much and it's too dense, I don't have to be stuck because I can't read what's there in front of me. It can get read to me, and it tells me the journey to the answer. Now, depending on the calculation you selected, you'll get a different length of the solution steps. But then you could, as a teacher, use the maths tool, or the pupil could use the maths tool, depending on which way you want to go about it. You can generate a practice quiz from the calculations that you've highlighted, whether it's one or whether it's multiple calculations. And if you press Generate Practice Quiz, what you will get is a little pop-up window where you'll need to sign in. So if you just click sign in, it normally detects that you already signed into Office 365. Just let that go through. And then what you can do is say, well, I would like 5 questions based on the calculation or calculations what we're doing, and you hit generate quiz. And then not only can the maths tool describe how you might reach the answer, it also generates in here a quiz for you, auto generates. There is the immersive reader again, so you can get each question read to you individually, so that doesn't have to be a barrier to understanding what you're doing in maths. You just then tick the radial button as to what the answer is randomly down the page. I'm just going to click a few, and then when you get to the bottom of your 5 questions, as a pupil you press submit, so it frees you up as a teacher. Pupils get that independence in learning, but they also get that support. So thanks, your results were submitted, view results, and then it tells you just how many you got wrong, which I'm actually terrible at this. So I got them all wrong. And if I got them all wrong, you could have a link embedded on top of your page saying if you're stuck or if you get more than half the questions wrong, please visit here and see the explanation or try practicing in a different way. Or you could direct them back over to here to see how they got to the answer. So the maths tool is built right into the software, particularly OneNote, so that you can use it there. It's also available separately as a maths tool on your phone, so, or your tablet device, so you can install it on Android or you can install it on Apple or iOS, and it works in the same way. But it's also got the plus point that you can hold it over the top of the work on your page, and it will then use the text recognition to then capture a copy and then help you solve the answer and understand the journey to the answer in a very similar way. So there's lots of different ways there that the maths tools are quite handy to get you started and get pupils going, and it frees up time for you in the classroom. You could circulate and work with other groups. Maybe you've got an intervention group and the rest of the class with a bit of support then understand where the maths tool is and how to use it. I'm just going to pop back across and see if there's any questions on the maths tool. Any questions at all on the maths and the accessibility tool there in OneNote? You can unmute or you can type into the chat. Nope. Okay, we'll carry on. I'm going to swap screens again away from the demo version of Teams and go back across to the presentation. The next area we're going to focus on is communication in an inclusive classroom. So you can have within the online version of PowerPoint or the desktop version of Office 365 or Office 2019, you've got something called Presenter Coach. And you may be using PowerPoint for presentations. You may be using other Office 365 apps like Sway. Again, Immersive Reader is built in there. But pupils often need some time to practice. And the Presenter Coach, as well as subtitles, is really useful for getting them used to presenting in a live situation, but it gives them feedback about what works best and making sure that they've got the support they need to improve their own presentation. You can join also PowerPoint live sessions by QR codes. So those QR codes allow you to scan it, and then on your phone it appears a version of the presentation that's on screen in class, but then the amended version is appearing on screen. So let's jump over and have a look at a couple of those in real terms. I will just swap. Just going to reshare across to the other screen again. If I decide to open up my PowerPoint presentation, so if I load it up there, I've got one that I was tinkering around with earlier in another session. So here's some text on screen, but what I want to do is I want to try presenting that and see if I can improve my presentation method. So if you go across to slideshow, you should get Rehearse with Coach, he says. And that one looks like it's not going to play ball, and also Present Live has decided it's not going to play ball. Let's see if I can get that to reload and come back up. Okay, let's, if not, try something else a minute. going to see if I can load a presentation somewhere else and we can try it over there. Just loading something off screen, and if it loads, I will jump over and I will use it to deliver the session for you. Apologies, I'm not quite sure why that hasn't loaded today. I used it yesterday and it's there. It doesn't normally have any stability problems. It's normally right there and available. Just going to open up this other file. Just loading it up. There must be a problem with the service from Microsoft this afternoon, which is not a great advert for the fact that we're here today. But I've just tried it in a different Office 365 account, not associated with the one I'm sharing with you, and also it is grayed out. So I can only speculate there must be a problem with using that tool here this afternoon. I can explain to you instead as to what should happen, and I know that's not as powerful as seeing it. Aha, Rehearse with Coach has come up. There we go. So if I wanted to rehearse this presentation and I wanted to understand what's going on, I will swap screens with you now, and so you can see the other screen. I'm not quite sure why Rehearse with Coach is not coming up in the other version. Oh no, it has come up in the other version now. There we go. You can press Rehearse with Coach, and what it will do is it will put you into presentation mode. You'll have to allow it access to your computer. And then you get the button down here. Instead of going straight into the presentation, you have to say start rehearsing. And what PowerPoint does is it will link you through to a recording, and it's constantly analyzing your voice, your tone, your pace compared to the text on screen, which it understands. And then it will give you some feedback. So if I start rehearsing, welcome to our demo this afternoon. What we are going to do is we are going to look at the school policies, and some of the policies are really good, and then some of the policies need some improvement, and they're not so fantastic. I don't know what comes next. I seem to be on a blank screen, and I'm not quite sure. And you can see it will start making suggestions down here. Try speaking a bit slower. Try not to use so pupils can get some coaching about good or bad about their presentation. If I pause it, and I press escape, what you will then get when you come out is you get a report of your rehearsal. It gives you a pace view, it tells you how long you spent, how many slides you talked about, originality, it gives you sensitivity of phrases, it gives you a graph of your pace and your pitch, and will give you some general suggestions about how you could possibly improve or what was already really good. So the presenter coach is a useful feature to have enabled there. Let's see if present live will work as well. So present live is on the same slideshow ribbon tab. So if I go to present live, it should bring my presentation in. It's going to load up, and we should get some subtitles on screen. Here we go. So this will be the QR code that if you're in class, you say to pupils, scan this on your camera enabled device, or you can send them a link, and the link's up here, powerpoint.ms/ and then the chain of letters. You can copy that link and you could put it into something like Teams so they can click it and join it, and then that will come up on the screen of their laptop if they don't have a camera enabled device. Or you could pre-print these QR codes. They could go around your classroom so that they can walk up and scan it and could be socially distant in current times, and it will tell you how many people have joined. So when you know you've got all the pupils that you want joined into your presentation and they're sat there live and they've choose their own language, you can limit it so that only people in your organization have a link and it works, or you can make it available to people outside of your organization, whichever way you wish to work. You go to start slideshow. When you go to start slideshow, You can be busily presenting on your slides. If I went back, so there's demo, and it might be there that I'm talking about school policy, but what the other person sees as a pupil or a student on their screen, they see a thumbnail version of that towards the top half of the screen, and in the bottom half of the screen, it will translate into the language that they've chosen, and they'll be able to give you some feedback via emojis at the same time. And whenever you want to, you can come out of that and you can just end the session, and then that will give the presenter live. You can resume the session or end the session, and if you want to end the session, it stops translating for them. It will ask you, do you want to stop presenting live? But it's another way to make PowerPoints more effective if you're going to use PowerPoints as a form of presentation. Either the present live to increase the accessibility for EAL pupils, or the rehearse with coach if you want pupils to be independent and using that for themselves. I will also show you that quite quickly over on the slides as a version that's it's in the animations on the slides, so that you can see from the pupil point of view what it looks like. I'll just bring you back into there. So here's where we were. We scanned our QR code, we've got our device going, and that's what a laptop view looks like here, and that's what a mobile device view looks like over here on the left. As far as going through the process, on the screen, down the bottom, I choose the language I want if I was the pupil, and then all of a sudden, I'm at the front of the class as the teacher talking in English, but I've selected Spanish, so everything comes across there in Spanish. And each audience or each pupil, or if you're working and you're presenting, maybe you're going to do a conference, or you're working with colleagues in other schools, and maybe with the staff, English isn't the primary language spoken, everyone can be translating into their own language, and everyone could be joining in, and they will understand what you're saying, and that translates for them. It does require a connection to the wireless, because the translation links to an online database that translates for the device that's using it. And then people can give you feedback, they can rate you on stars. Not only can they give emojis, they can say about clarity of presentation, in content, in introductions, and so forth. So there's lots of different ways that you can either practice your presentation, live presentations. We haven't shown you today, but there's also a designer tool which will remix presentations and take the content of the slide and just move it around and organize it in a more pleasing way. PowerPoint captions are available, and they are in desktop versions of Office and PowerPoint for Mac, and also for Word, so that they're there and they're available for you. But again, you need to have the most recent versions of Office for them to work. You can have live captioning in Teams if it's been enabled in your Office 365. So one of the things that I quite commonly come up against when I'm doing these sessions is that someone will go, it's not there in my meeting bar. So if you watch the video a few times, in the meeting bar in the middle, and either be in the middle if you down the bottom if you've got the old version of meetings, or in the top if you've got the new version of meetings, but you press the three dots, and just near where you can record the meeting, if it's enabled in your Office 365 tenancy, or if it's been rolled out to you, there will be a translate feature in Teams meetings. At the moment, that hasn't seemed to have been rolled out cohesively across every single Office 365 tenancy I work with in every school. So some schools have it and some schools don't. I had it for a while in this demo version of Office 365, but it's disappeared again. And I asked Microsoft, well, what's going on? Why is it not actually consistently available in all Office 365 tenancies in all schools? And they said they had some problems when they rolled it out, and they hope to release it fully and properly in the next full version of Teams update. And I think that will come along with things like breakout rooms too. So there's lots of different ways that you, in the end, will be able to get those languages into Teams meetings. But at the moment, I'm frustrated as everybody else. It's not a consistent experience. And if you got it, you're lucky. But also, I've had it and I've lost it. So if you've got it, don't assume you're going to keep it. It might be that it's there for a while and it disappears again. So hopefully Microsoft are going to sort that out, and there'll be some stability around that. You could also use captions in OneNote using the translator tool, and I'll show you the translator tool next. The way to do that is there exactly on the screen. You can play, you can pause captions, you can highlight different parts of text, and that's available under the View tab in OneNote. And again, you'll need to have the translator tool enabled and installed for that, but it allows you to do it. I'm just going to jump back over to the chat because I can see a couple of people who asked questions. Send you the AMIE code at the end of the presentation. Yeah, if you drop your email address into the chat, I will end up picking you up. I can't see your name. All I can see is you badged up as SEN coordinator. So, or just put your name, and if you don't wish to put your email address in, I've got a list of email addresses, and I can email you the code directly afterwards. Not a problem at all. So OneNote Live Captioning links to Translator. So Translator is Microsoft's version of voice translation software. Again, it's very powerful and helps quite a lot with getting either meetings started. So I've used it before where I'm meeting with a parent and English isn't a language that they understand or speak. And in the meeting room, we've used Microsoft Translator for me to speak in English and for them to have a screen in front of them that translates into the language that they read, or to actually speak in the language that they speak so they can understand the conversation that we're having. It's an app that can be installed in Android or iOS, but you could also install it as an app from the Microsoft Store on your Windows 10 device. I tend to use it as the online version quite frequently, and I think what I'll do is I'll jump over now to the online version and I'll show you exactly where that is. In Translator, we're one of the last tools we look at this afternoon, but we're trying to give you a flavour of what's available out there and just how you might be able to use it in your school. So if I stop sharing the screen that I'm currently showing, and I share across to another screen, and the website that you'll search for is Microsoft Translator. You'll be prompted at the top. If you haven't got Microsoft Translator installed, you'll get the installation button. You can also find that on the Microsoft Store and go and pick that up and install it on your Windows 10 laptop or desktop. If you are using Translator, you're going to need a microphone and speakers. Otherwise, it's a pretty limited experience and certainly won't be able to pick up your voice as you're speaking. You'll want to make sure that you choose the education version, and then what you'll end up in is the Translator website, which you can get to at translator.microsoft.com. And here you're going to have one or two options. I'm going to show you both because it's useful to see both sides of the coin. You can join a conversation. So if you are somebody coming to the school as a visitor or you're a pupil joining in, you can produce a conversation code. And what the person does is they put in the conversation code that you give them, and then they enter their name. They say the language that they're going to be using, so you can choose the different language that you want to have displaying on screen, regardless of the language that the person is speaking. So if I was speaking English and I wanted it to display in Canadian French, I can then choose that there. And providing I've entered the code, I can enter a conversation that's managed by me as a teacher, and whether that's with a parent or a pupil, I will have control of that. They've just joined and they passively then hear what I'm saying and they see the text on screen, but they wouldn't be able to click on anything and change it. The other side of it is you running the whole Translator meeting. You can log in using a Google account, your Facebook account, but probably I would recommend using your school Microsoft Office 365 account. So you click it, you'll get a sign-in window. Should go through straight away. It detects the account that you're using. So mine's going through the sign-in process now. It says start your conversation. So my name is Mr. Long. My language, I would need to change that back to English. And I'm using this product in a classroom. I normally tick that because it makes things easier. And I go into enter. And then it will take me through to another tab. And what it does is it starts to connect with the internet and load up the translation library. So again, you do need an internet connection. So it will tell you about the microphones you've got on your computer. And you can see up here, I have to allow it to use the microphone on my computer for privacy reasons. And then I will be set up and ready to go. So you'll not be able to speak during the browser limitations. I've got past that, so I'll skip that out because I've resolved that, hopefully. Here would be a QR code again, and I could print out that QR code, or I can give a link and I can email that link out, or I can separately print that QR code out. But what you can start to do is talk. And as you are talking, as you can see from the box there, it will appear on screen for me in English, but if I'd chosen another language, it will start to appear in the language that I prefer, be it Spanish, Polish, Chinese. I'm at the moment in presenter mode, but I can switch presenter mode off if I like. And down here, if I want to, I can talk back in the message. So if I was doing this as a person talking to me, I can also speak in there and the language will come across at the same time. It's something to play around with. There we go. It's picked up my speech when I pressed the button there, because I've gone to a new paragraph. But it will build up, and what you get on screen is a dialogue from the lesson. So you can use that in OneNote, or you can use this web version on its own. And when you're finished, you can exit there. If you need to change any of your settings, you can click the settings button up here. You can play your speech output, you can mute everyone, you can lock the conversation if you wanted to, you can change the size of the font on screen. If somebody needs the font to be bigger, then you can drag the font size up and it should auto compensate for that. There you go, the font size is coming up. And if at the end of it you need to evidence the conversation where people have been speaking backwards and forwards, you can see it's busy translating what I've said with a little bit of lag. I can download a transcript so it can come offline, and if I need evidence of what I discussed with a parent or a pupil, maybe I'm in a one-to-one intervention or I'm doing some small group work, I maybe have had a meeting with a parent and I need to just have evidence of that, the saved transcript is there for you to take out at the end. But if I am truly finished, I can just exit at the end. If I want to get rid of that off the side and I want some more space to actually concentrate on the conversation, if you needed to get someone in and give them the conversation code, there is the conversation code if they want to join this conversation. And then you can start to have that conversation backwards and forwards. So Translator is a really useful tool. You can use it as an installed app, either on your iOS, Apple phone or tablet. You can use it on an Android phone or tablet. You can install it on your Windows computer, or if you aren't on a Windows computer, maybe saying you're using a Chromebook or something like that and you're in a Google school, then use the tabbed version and it will work perfectly well at the web browser as well. So you've got lots and lots of options to use Translator, either on its own or in OneNote class notebook, and it will work just as well either way. So as far as your professional development is concerned this afternoon, I have got some suggested links on the Microsoft Education Centre that may give you some additional resources to go and get stuck into. Skip past the translator page because we've covered that. You can use a course on the Microsoft Education Centre. If you search, it's called Getting Immersive Reader link, and then we'll get you there, and it will get you some immersive independent learning with the maths tool in OneNote, and that's another good course. There's also a course on PowerPoint Presenter Coach, and then that will link you into how to use presenter tools. There's a guide down the bottom for using Immersive Reader, and that's quite useful for getting stuck into Immersive Reader and understanding those different options on the 3 tabs that we had. There's also an online guide to how to use the Microsoft Math Solver tool that we used earlier. Today has been all about using the learning tools and improve ability to learning using those tools. The next session is just going to focus on using a single product called Sway. It's an alternative to using PowerPoint, and you can use it for presentations. You use it as yourself as a professional, or you can use it with pupils, and we'll be focusing on that during the next session that we have. But for today, I am just going to, and then we'll share the code with you so that you can get the code and you can